Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a very special guest today, Jeff Depatie, former JTF2 operator. I don't know how many people are going to know what that is in our audience, but you'll remember a certain Canadian sniper team that I think killed a guy at over 3 miles or some shit like that, or close to 3 miles, and that was them. That was that unit, right?
Yeah, that's the unit. Similar to your SEAL Team 6 or CAG.
Yep. So tell me a little bit about your background. Obviously, you ended up in a Tier 1 unit there in Canada, but what got you into the service in the first place?
We all have different reasons for wandering down that path. Mine was, I'm going to say now, but at the time, an attempt at service to my country, service to myself. And when I say service, something along the lines of what your podcast, the essence of what it has, where you either stand by idly or you, in this case, volunteer to be part of something that may help push the pay stick forward or not. That compounded with I had all the natural attributes to be an operator. At the time, that was very much in my DNA. I was not an extremist, like the word has been used a lot these days, but someone who had a very reactive nature, who liked to explore the edges of human experience, climbing whatever, jumping off of whatever, and driving it as fast as you can kind of stuff. And that also meant inwardly what it meant to push who I was inwardly, not just performance metrics like how fast can I run, how high can I jump, but really exploring those edges. And I'd say those were some of the guiding forces among the myriad of other things that lead someone into the forces, into those realms.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it is true. Yeah, we all kind of get there in different ways. And there is this, I blame the movies. Hollywood is weird. But you have this idea of like a fucking 6'3" Adonis who's your Tier 1 operator, but for the most part, they're like 5'8" to 6 foot, and they're endurance athletes and not power lifters. You know what I mean? I think we get kind of the wrong impression about who that person is typically, but I guess
damn G.I. Joe.
Yeah. So, or Sergeant Slaughter too, if you're a wrestling fan. Although he was just, I think he was a buck sergeant, so that's not that great. So, what have you been doing since you left the service? What's your goals been, I guess? And was it? I feel like a lot of people who get into the kind of work you're into now go through something of their own, some of their own problems with regard to transitioning back to normal life, and a lot of them find a way to turn that into a movement or business or something like that.
Yeah. So much to chat about just in that one question. But it's what I'm kind of here and living for. I had come to a point, Dan, and this is going to be like, oh boy, this could sound hot buttonish. But I just felt that the military was actually not helping as much as it may have been hindering, keeping us a prisoner in our own systems and our own psychic pillars. Now, like I said, that's totally up for discussion, and it's more of an anecdotal statement. But when I left, I felt like a lot of people who leave those upper echelon organizations, they feel very isolated and alone. And usually the course they take is they try to adapt the world around them, as not as much as adapt to the world that's around them, right? It takes a lot of time to make an operator. There's a lot of molding, a lot of being tamped on, hammered, dunked in the oil, you know what I mean? Forged over and over and over and over. And this does things to your epigenetics. It does things to your physiology. It does things to your mind. And like you said, on the other side, you come out, and in my case, it was like, okay, what would I do with these things? I don't want to work for the government. I don't want to be a contractor. So I have these unique skill sets, and where do I take them? And the direction I went was more with the human dynamics, human kinetics, human optimization, human selection, and what that actually means beyond performance metrics. How do we take these tools and become more of our individual selves, seek our individuality, not be an individual separate from the greater collective, the more metaphorical collective, but how do we change? How do we root out our shadows and blind spots from the past, from childhood, and find where we really sit in our own values? Because at the end of the day, we are actually all unique. You know, you are an atomic structure that is 100% unique for me. We have similarities, right, that overlap a little, like the Venn diagrams, but you're different than me. And what does it really mean to fully be you? And then you touched on something really interesting, the undoing process of being a soldier. People forget that there's a lot of stress to become a soldier. And then you experience a lot of stress. You experience things that are potentially difficult to process. So you suppress and you repress. And then on the other side, what happens, usually about 2 years after, you really start to change. You've already been struggling with identity issues and transition issues. Not to mention, you know, there's some fucking crazy stats about how many soldiers get into drugs and heroin and alcohol and those things. So the battle's already begun, but then PTSD style symptoms start kicking in where your survival mechanisms really go awry. And that happened to me. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD, and just luckily I had been on this path already of discovering a concept that we use called post-traumatic growth, more to the point, intentionally facilitated post-traumatic growth, which just, if we think about PTSD as a low, as a battle in the underworld, post-traumatic growth is what we do, what we take back to the normal world or to the thriving world. One is an insecure state, one is a secure state, and then we can couple on top of that what we call a thriving state, where it means to be more fulfilled. And I think in the statement, the pursuit of happiness, that's what they were talking about. Becoming more yourself, being more fulfilled, not in a greedy way, not in a I get mine way, but I get to be me way. And what does that look like in a collective? So yeah, that led me down a lot of rabbit holes into different programming for courses for people, mostly for men. I started off very strongly. Well, I'm a man, so I kind of know a little bit more about that than being a woman. But men are, especially boys right now, but men are, they're at a crossroads. We're in this evolutionary transition time. And it's like, okay, what does it mean to be a man these days? You know, we have these awesome tools: provide, preside, protect, persevere, pleasure, play. But what does that mean layered on a world that has more feminine expression, you know, where children are different and it's changing, right? Our environment's changing. Our technology is changing us. So what does that mean? How do we look at that and still seek out our own greatest attributes, if you will? And that's where I finally, you know, you came from hard times in the 82nd. They make you work for it, right?
Yeah, it's not easy.
Something that happens. Yeah. And then something happens though from that struggle. You know, there's gold that comes from it too. You know, sometimes there's some shit, and the shit can take a long time to reorganize in the mind. You know, it can be confusing and whatnot. But there's something about struggle that is magical. There's no secret about that right now in the world. People are trying to figure out what that formula is. It's just, why do we struggle? You know, what is the common orientation that we can have? And those are some of the like cool little side branches, just to give you some tangents if you want to tear away at those. Sure, you know, yeah. cut away the threads and open up the seams of some of these topics.
Well, I mean, one of it is the easiest part to attack there is biological programming, right? And it's beyond the idea of just masculinity and femininity, as it were, or even societal pressures. This happens at every level of life, right? So grapes, for example, do better when they struggle on the vine, because one of the ways that they fight back against arid climates is to produce a sweeter grape, right? And that's what we like. We're looking for that, right? So if you overwater your grapes, you're going to get shitty grapes. Shitty wine, actually, is what I care about. I don't give a fuck about grapes, but yeah, it's part of life, right? That we like to think sometimes that the struggle is what defines us, but it's really not. It's resilience, right? It's built into the evolutionary process. To those that are resilient are going to flourish and those who learn how to be more effectively and efficiently resilient are going to be at the top of the class, whatever the class happens to be. Now, for humanity, we spend a lot of time thinking about that, which probably is not the best idea, to be honest, but here we are. So this is the environment we're in at this point. There's no going, you can't unring that bell, for lack of a better phrase. So one of the things you talked about is stuff in childhood. Now, one of the most common identifiers, or one of the most common demographics that operators fall into, tier 1 and tier 2 operators primarily fall into, is that they had some kind of difficult childhood, broken families, abuse, stuff like that. It's not true for everybody, but it is very common. More common in that community than any other police or military or any kind of thing like that, any kind of violent job. So you mentioned, just the post-traumatic stress and stuff like that. One of the things we've definitely overlooked in this whole process is how we have a very high commonality of childhood neglect and abuse amongst these people, and then it compounds, right? Once you become an adult and no longer have to deal with those issues, but then you're developing new issues, you just stack them on top of each other. So we're, again, I think the first couple of decades or so of trying to treat post-traumatic stress was event-based almost. It's like that we had this idea that a single or multiple traumatic events individually would combine together to, and we've got these tropes of like people having flashbacks and shit. But the reality is it's just prolonged exposure to heightened stress that changes the way your body operates. It fucks up the way your neural pathways work. It disassociate you from some stuff, and then creates bad associations in your brain for things that are more or less innocuous in everyday life, right? Things that might seem problematic in a combat zone, but aren't back here, and then you don't know how to deal with it. It's much more complex and nuanced than we wanted it to be, unfortunately, right? And we behaved that way for a very long time. And now we're kind of seeing the fallout from that. We spend all this money and do all this stuff to try to prevent it and then treat it afterwards. But I mean, honestly, to some degree, I kind of feel like we've been throwing gas on the fire.
Yeah, well, it's a runaway train that no one is stopping to really look at it holistically. We're very much in the left brain era, A to B, and that's just not the nature of the universe. So, like, if you don't mind, I'd love to touch on a couple things there. You mentioned about biology and shaping us. So, and there's a guy, his name's Lewin, he's a psychologist. His expression is personality plus environment equals behavior. And it's like really like simplified, but the way the environment and the consciousness feedback loops shape you from even before you're born in utero. And I'm going to use the word epigenetics here, and I'll tie that into PTSD in a little bit. Begin right away, like you said, and then it starts this house of cards. And then people's egos get in the way. That's the biggest challenge to adaptation. The ego is a very powerful survival tool, but there's one that keeps people caught in loops. Just like right now, it's kind of hard. It's not impossible, but it's kind of hard to argue that we aren't devastating the oceans and the forests around us, the very environment that sustains us, yet we keep going. We keep living out these patterns, right? That's because the systems we have created feed back into our non-serving mechanisms. And yeah, the childhood thing, there's a great study done by DARPA that shows that operators are able to metabolize cortisol faster. I believe that's an epigenetic trait, not one that's in my DNA. It's one that's on my DNA. And I use this exact process in my courses, where you encounter extreme stress, complex system adapts and becomes more complex. You use grapes, which their stimuli are called tropisms. Well, we work very much the same way. The issue with resilience is most people, the way I like to say it, perseverance without insight is pointless. It's just pressing through to press through. And sometimes that works, but oftentimes it doesn't. And that's the difference with human beings. We have a prefrontal cortex that's able to weigh those feedback loops. We're able to weigh in on them differently. Just with things like PTSD or any stress disorder, we start losing those faculties. We go much more limbic, and that's where we run into a big issue. That's when I say the ego, where we have a thing called implicit bias, which are the patterns that run through us. Some people might call them stereotypes. Usually stereotype is only like used for big things, like, oh yeah, that's a stereotype against that race, or that's a stereotype against that gender. But really, right now, you and I are running all kinds of stereotypes through our head that we're not even aware of. Our body's filtering out billions and billions of bits of information based on biases that we created in the womb, before the womb. Even in our DNA as humans, we have biases that are built in. But the thing is, we can fucking overcome these things. And that's like the realm of the real hero. Everybody wants to point the finger, right? That's the victim. The victim points a finger. The hero decides to take ownership and courageously starts to follow what I'll use the term heart, but it comes down to more like your DNA or soul or God or whatever. It has much more depth than just like a simplified term like the heart. I think people start living from their right brain more so than the left. The world around us is very left brain, right? Light on, light off, light on, light off, follow this, follow that. That's a very left brain world, but we are actually de-nurturing parts of our brain and over-nurturing parts of our brain. And it's creating a simplified world that's just, maybe I'll use the word convoluted, that's not really working. And what that does, feeds back in. Now kids are, like phones and stuff are filled with haptics, basically Pavlovian conditioning. And all these things are causing these strifes and struggles, that we're kind of coming through, I think, the end of the Chicken Little generation, where it's just like, the world is falling apart and it's this person's fault and it's that and it's this and the world's, it's like, okay, well, let's look at the common thread and we'll start at the smallest unit, the individual. How are you, me, guilty of fucking, playing at this party and keeping it going? Doesn't take a lot to look at it and be like, oh shit, I'm buying this product instead of that product. I'm supporting this organization instead of that organization. I'm not rooting out my shadows. I'm not seeing, okay, what from childhood isn't good for me, right? Like, it's pretty easy to see the pattern of like extreme sexual abuse turning into something later on, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. Energetic trauma, like where your energy is distorted as a child, as a teenager, even as an adult, doesn't have to be that dramatic. Like you said, it can be a slow drip and it's relative. So you're in a combat zone for 12 months. What does that do? Maybe because there's people who don't even see a lick of combat, or mechanics, for example. But the idea that a bomb could come in at any time is there. Sure. Every night they go to sleep, that bomb can come in.
And you're still like, people don't understand the practical effects of something like that. So when your fight or flight mechanism is kicked in, whether there's what we might call real danger or not, the masculine approach to that is to get angry, right? I'm angry now, I'm ready to fucking fight. No matter if there's actually somebody to fight or not. Sometimes it's just a bomb or a loud noise. Then you get back to your home country, you get back to your family, and you hear a loud noise, and now I'm pissed off for no reason, right? A book falls onto the ground, and now I'm fucking angry, and my family feels that anger. And you're talking about that energy. We've all been around people who just walk around fucking pissed off all the time. I've been one of those people. You know what I mean? But I've been around them too. I grew up around that shit. And it definitely has a measured effect on people.
Yeah. And what's really cool about it is, I'll use this guy named David Hawkins. He's an American. He's passed away now. Created something called the scale of consciousness, which he measured using applied kinesiology. And, a lot of people eye roll at it, but it doesn't matter. It's the concept of it that's true. And on one end, starting at 0 up to a certain score, about 300 or so, you have fear-based emotions, shame, guilt, apathy, desire, pride, anger, and then what we'd call more like fear, like a fight or flight kind of response, like a really impulsive. At a certain point, on pride, he talks about courage, and courage is that exact concept of is stepping into something different. And above that are love-based emotions, neutrality, acceptance, peace, love, joy, and they work towards what's called enlightenment, which just means it doesn't have to be like all esoteric. It just means, like I was talking about, consciousness feedback loops. As someone moves through their environment, they're very aware of how they're impacting that environment. They know that eating this food is going to do this to them. They know that the output is going to be this if they interact with this person in this certain way. It's okay to be angry. Our emotions are never wrong. It's our projections that fucking suck, because we go into automatic feedback loops, we hit those implicit biases and then we display anger. If if the world just like had a little bit more love, a little bit more patience, and wasn't so fucking caught up in survival mode, because most of the world is in survival mode. 2.5 billion people don't even have enough food to step out of survival mode. You know, most people don't, let's just say you have your basic Maslowian needs met. Most people don't really feel safe and secure. We're caught in this reality, what's called augmented survival, where you're never good enough. You could be complete if you buy this. You can be complete if you feel this way. You could be this, you could be that, you know? And what's happening, we're seeing the pattern. More and more, we don't know our neighbors. More and more, we don't talk with our neighbors. More and more, the family unit's getting smaller. More and more, really healthy organizations are starting to dwindle. You know, we're seeing like the juxtaposition of this as well. You know, I'm not all doom and gloom. You know, we're seeing good organizations rise up. We're seeing good organizations of any kind take their swing at this. But what's happening is we're in this, we're getting close to a precipice is what's happening. And we know it. Everybody's knowing it right now. That's why everyone's talking about it, because as human beings, we don't have to wait for the fucking asteroid to hit the earth. You know, we don't have to fucking hang Jesus on the cross. We can do these changes without going through the awful shit. That's the advantage of being a human. Just right now, it's fucking tough, right? Because not everyone's on the trolley. There's a lot of people still in those fear-based patterns, and they're not taking ownership of themselves. And it's simple, because it is the scariest shit you will ever face. You know, I'm a combat veteran, multiple encounters. Like I said, 30,000 feet jumping out of a plane. Yeah. Okay. It wasn't until I started fucking digging into my shadows that I was like, holy fuck. No wonder I couldn't face this shit, you know? And some of it is trivial, you know, it comes from childhood and it's picked up from mom, and it wasn't like fucking she was beating me or something like that. It was just like a moment in time that it was like too much for little Jeff to handle, and it distorts me. And that's what you mentioned, the word dissociation, is where I dissociate from reality. And what happens is the more you as an individual, but especially as a collective, disassociate from reality and pull apart, I'll call it ideality, your version of reality, and reality as it sits as a collective, the farther that is, the more discord there is. And the more discord there is, the more opportunities for drama. And people are addicted to drama right now. I call it the trauma porn era. When we were filming our doc, The Dark Night of Our Soul, we got exposed to all kinds of this stuff because we were looking for, okay, well, how do we get out of it as a collective? What's the so what? How do we do this together? And it turns out it's really not all that hard. We just got to be human beings. You know what I mean? We got to meet our needs. We got to fucking get along a little bit better. Stop isolating so much and open up the conversation, just talking. And you know this because soldiers are great at putting things away and using irreverent humor to start to box it up. But it didn't matter what intervention for PTSD. Didn't matter, you know, it doesn't have to be full PTSD. It could be just PTS or, you know, a stressful encounter. Whether it was ketamine or ayahuasca or any other plant medicine, whether it was virtual reality or a fucking surfing trip, whether it was doing a boot camp, whatever it was, the first thing they did was interact with another human being. Simultaneously, they engaged their prefrontal cortex. They set a goal. They walked towards that goal, you know, and that's what you do. That's what we're doing a little bit skewed right now, in my opinion, because our value set. So we talked about like attention, right? That filtering of information that comes into someone right now. That's what we're doing. It'll run through your lower regions of your brain, just above the brainstem, and blah, 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 blah. You know, it's all anecdotal when it comes to the brain. It's all statistical. But the idea is it runs through that. If it gets beyond that, it goes through your emotions and then it kind of gets processed there. But if it doesn't go up to your upper cerebral faculties, our neocortex, we're not going to come up with what's called open node thinking. We're not going to be able adding any value to our lives. And so I'm a Canadian, but you know, I've helped evacuate American servicemen off the battlefield. I've just for the first time paid taxes this year, applying for my residency. So I think I can, you know, I weigh in on these things a little bit when I say like, that's what I really think the original ideals of the US was. So I mentioned Dr. Hawkins. He scored humans like Jesus and Buddha and Gandhi and whatnot, and they all obviously scored higher in the consciousness scale. They're able to absorb and properly navigate the world with less discord than others. He scored the Bible and, you know, texts and movies and things that are like garbage, and then like movies that like resonate deeply on a very human level and whatnot. And one of the highest scoring things was the can't remember if it was the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution.
Mm.
Like I don't really know the difference there, but it was exactly what those dudes were, I think, envisioning at that time, which was, that pursuit of liberty, which is not really a Canadian word. So I would use fulfillment over security. But I think it's that same essence. Um, yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's the idea of we would say, I guess, that liberty is necessary for fulfillment. And you can see this throughout human history in all governments. The more central authority there happens to be in a state or country or government, at whatever it is, the more individualistic approach people take for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why. I think it might be just like a social contagion of fight or flight, where people start to look inward. They're more concerned about themselves than they are about everybody else. But when you see instances of decentralized or less government, typically what you're going to find are groups of people who care deeply about making sure the community is taken care of. And I think it's because people want to have responsibilities. That's one of the frightening things about leaving the military. I think you're you're in your 20s or 30s, and you're responsible for millions of dollars of equipment and other human lives, and you're doing very dangerous things on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And then you get home and it's like, well, I've got to mow the lawn now, right? And it's difficult to it's difficult to come to terms with that my life has changed now, because everybody, maybe it is an ego thing, but I think that ego exists for a reason. Your it's to directly associate your identity as a human being with your purpose on this earth, whatever it happens to be. Whether you're a protector, provider, like we would be, or a nurturer, like most females are. You,
Yeah, if I could. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Dan. I
no,
was
go
just
ahead,
gonna.
go ahead.
Well, I think the root goes back to fear-based thinking. So, just as a species, if we kind of timeline what we think we know scientifically and Darwinianly and reductionistly, we are only at this point because of what came before us, right? And it was mostly survival and fear-based thinking. But those psychic pillars exist within us, because you said it. You like liberty is needed for fulfillment, but what we're doing is we're actually giving up liberty more and more, because one of our basically money is the driving force behind everything right now, and it is actually becoming more controlled by individuals more than it ever has in history. We have richer humans than ever, and the more we do this, the more this insanity is going to continue. And here's the thing, like, until people know, so love based, just think of it on like a physical, like an atomic level. It's the attractive forces versus the repulsive forces. It's like a fundamental evolution of the universe expressing itself through us. Most people have no idea what it means to really love, and they don't, because they think it's a childish word, or the hippie word or whatnot.
Mm.
But we've forgotten how powerful it is. That's how Gandhi stood down the British without really going to war. That's how Martin Luther King did his thing. That's how Nelson Mandela, that's how they do it, with power, with a love-based approach. And we don't have that right now. And what's happening is we're actually disconnecting more and more and more, which makes it scarier and makes the options less and less and less. And then you say, like a word like purpose. How the fuck is anyone going to actually find their purpose if they're in a fear-based state? If they're just struggling to survive, even though they have a roof over their head, if they're in a survival place, they're not going to be able to root out their real values and backtrack that with the skills they have with their DNA. Because that's what happens, right? Usually by the time we're really asking the question, what is my purpose? We have 20, 30 years of baggage, of other people's baggage, of the human baggage that we got to, like, holy fuck, like, what do I do with all this when I also have to interact in the world, and I still got to buy groceries, and I like, it's just this nice opportunity, though, because I think it's simple. At the end of the day, we overcomplicate it. All people have to do is really start discovering who they are. And once that happens, they'll automatically raise their consciousness, which will automatically change what books go on their shelves, what shows they watch. Most likely they'll turn off most shows because most of it's garbage.
Yeah.
And they'll tune in to other frequencies or consciousness levels that are similar, and that'll start a movement. And we just keep doing that. And yeah, it doesn't fix the myriad of issues across the globe in one night. But what it does is it starts giving us the actual neural strength as a collective to really look at these issues in a healthier way, instead of like this kind of rat race feel we got, right? Where we know it's imbalanced, we know it's not working, we know these things, and it's like, okay, well, how do we courageously step out of these as a group? And that's what I said. You just start believing in yourself. That's not an arrogant approach to belief. That's arrogance and self-awareness usually don't go together. They're not usually found hand in hand. So you start exploring yourself, little things like sit in some quiet for a bit. Look at your Maslowian needs. Are they really met? Are you eating hormone-filled garbage food that's fucking processed? Are you drinking good water that doesn't have added chemicals, to try to make it pure and filled with birth control juices? And like, you know what I mean? Like, look at these things. Because if your physical body, which is probably one of the, I don't really like to do linear, like do this, then this, then this. Usually it's layered, right? And it's non-linear dynamics that the universe runs on. But the body is the good place to start because it's easier than trying to figure out, well, what's my purpose? Well, fuck, man, if your body's not even really tickety boo, and I don't mean like, got to be bench pressing 700 pounds or running the 4-minute mile here. I just mean, are you able to move through time and space in a healthy way without feeling sore? Are you able to nourish your brain so it has the nutrients to do this stuff? And then one of the big ones is sleep. Kind of an interesting fact I like to just mention to, would-be soldiers or first responders or those afterwards. If you go through a traumatic event, if you get into REM sleep that night, you're 70% less likely to develop PTSD. That's according to studies. And if you get into REM sleep the night after, not that night, you add another 40% chance. You know what I mean? Because what happens is DMT likes to sort our neural pathways out. It makes sense of this stuff. That's what making sense means. Meaning finding isn't necessarily doing it in a journal or a talking circle. The neurons have to actually fire. They have to disintegrate old pathways that don't work and then add new ones that do work. And it happens, like I said, you set the conditions for these kinds of things to happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest issue, particularly with vets and post-traumatic stress disorder, is you mentioned earlier that we like to suppress and repress, compartmentalize, whatever you want to call it, because there's still work to get done, which is true. But we also lie to ourselves quite a bit about it. You know what I mean? We try to moralize the act of suppression, which is fucking retarded, to be honest. It's completely antithetical to survival, to be honest, that we do that. I don't know where that particular evolutionary trait came from, but I've found myself in this spot as well, but I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of other people. After all of that compartmentalization, now you're faced with the reality that, as you mentioned before, this military we've been a part of probably wasn't helping the world all that much, to be frank, right? In my opinion, I think we were doing more damage than in a lot of cases, than we were solving. And then trying to explain to yourself when you get home and convince yourself maybe why it was all worth it or whether it was at all is a big problem for people, and that not having the right psychological baseline, if you want to call it that, or be in the right frame of mind or have the right information to contextualize your service like that becomes a real fucking problem for people. I mean, it is your brain is essentially a very sophisticated machine that builds patterns and determines between threats and benefits, right? That's what it's made to do. And,
Yep.
No one wants to feel like an asshole. Nobody wants to feel like they've wasted their lives. And I'll tell you this, nobody will fight harder for a lie than people that have wasted their lives believing it. That's an absolute fact.
That is the most energy anyone will ever expend, is denying those kinds of facts, denying themselves. And they'll use drugs, drinking, distraction. When I say distraction, anything that takes you away from feeling. So that could be a screen, that can be food, that can be drugs and alcohol, that can be abusive sex, not like physically abusive, but just,
Mm,
using sex just to ignore what you're
sure.
feeling.
Yeah.
Anything that does that, because we're supposed to process our feelings.
That's
Yeah.
why
And, then,
experiential avoidance never works. Like I don't I this may be controversial for some people, but I don't believe in the idea of sobriety. I think if you have to completely avoid something for your entire life, even if you're not using it, it still has quite a bit of control over your life. You know what I mean? And experiential
Mhm.
avoidance, more broadly speaking, not thinking about something. What's the old military phrase? Bad news doesn't get better with time. You know what I mean? Like you got
Mhm.
to fix that shit now because
Yeah.
downstream, I mean, think it, you're a sniper. You know how it is. A very small error on your part, 2,000 meters down, is going to be a big error, right?
Yeah. And that's how it is, right? We
Mm,
don't see the 2000 meters all the time in this thing called life. You,
yeah.
you nailed it, man. Of alcohol can have its place as what we call an altered state of consciousness,
Mm,
where you feel better for a little bit and it changes your mind for a little bit. Doesn't You don't do that every single day until your neural anatomy starts calcifying and
mm,
fucking disintegrating. That's where like things like plant medicines are really great. We started a program called Citizen Green up in Canada, and we're going to roll it out in the U.S. where it's designed to do these things. It's designed to help troops transition. It's designed to help them find purpose and identity and learn about post-traumatic growth and anti-PTSD measures. And also, if they are working with PTSD, how to cope with it. But we fold in medical cannabis with it and how to use that to do these things, because, you know, nature does give us some tools that we can use to our benefit to help break these patterns that are not going to serve us. And that's the thing with
mm.
a shadow, is it's going to hide out. It's hiding behind there where you can't just look, right? It puts up the blinders and it makes it very hard. And, you touched on something. We call it decompression. You guys, I know, use the same thing, a
Mm,
decompression. You come back from a tour and you decompress for 20 minutes and, your tour is all got it. It's like
mm.
the nervous system requires great amounts of decompression. That's what's cool about now, like with HRV and stuff like that. We can see like, no, man, you need more time off. Okay, now you're ready to stress your
Yeah.
nervous system again.
I mean,
And
it's almost you need half the time off that you were exposed to stress is a pretty good multiplier, I guess, divisor in that equation. But
yeah, you know what? I would say 1 to 1.
yeah,
Um,
well, that's
like
never going to
really,
happen, though,
like
right?
it'll never happen.
Yeah.
No, you're right. They won't weigh someone's life and the long term effects of
Mm,
it, because like if you take Soldier A, gets PTSD, leaves the military, even if he becomes homeless, he's going to impact people around him, the
mm,
world around him. We don't know how to measure those kinds of things. And then you kind of touched on one that is difficult to take with you, which is called moral wounding, where yeah, maybe you acted in accordance, but once you step back and you start to look at the whole picture, it's like, well, whose pocketbook's getting lined here?
yeah, it's
Who's
interesting.
like when you start to weigh that, because
Yeah,
it's a different wound than PTSD. It's a
yeah.
different set of parameters,
And
and
we
you
have
wrestle
this.
with it differently.
We've got this idea that the moral injury comes from uh, doing your job, like killing people in combat. Now, I've never personally experienced that type of moral injury, but on a broader scale, it was what you're describing right now. It's that we fucking wrecked all these places, and I never had a problem doing it at the time. But looking back on it, it was a mistake. You know what I mean? And we're responsible
Yeah.
for that to some degree. That is a much greater moral injury to me than getting in a gunfight and somebody, happens to get killed that maybe shouldn't have. That's war. That shit happens. I can contextualize that. What I can't contextualize is all of my effort, all of my buddies' effort, and our losses and their losses for what purpose, right? There's got to be some kind of reason to do all this shit.
Yeah, and with that, I think as long as we continue to remain isolated as a global community, we're going to do that, because if we weigh our needs in isolation and not the needs of other people, that's what's going to happen. Like like take a moment to step back. Like
Mm.
I get it. Being the U.S. with your foreign policy is you know let's call it a nightmare. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Suboptimal, we'll say that.
it's suboptimal, but it's also this responsibility that I don't think one country should have.
Mm.
But let's see, like, why do we do it? Why do we keep it like that? Probably because of fear, because of loss, because we don't want to have to sacrifice prosperity. Like I could tell you as a Canadian that most Canadians ain't going to give up their what's the word I'm looking for? Not their station in life, but their no, anyways, their prosperity.
Mm.
Like because we know there's hungry people in the world, and yet we still try to squirrel away as much ducats in the bank as possible. Like, um, but again, like it's a big issue, but I'm not really scared of it. I think that we are finally, people such as yourself having this conversation, putting yourself maybe some of it's anecdotal, some of it, you and I both know would be what we'd call truth,
Mm.
versus being a fact. But this is what has to happen. It has to be the true exploration of conversation. And then we have to truly be able to implement these things. That's one of the things that I don't think we're so good at is busting down those old principles. There's a great myth in Egypt, the myth of Osiris, and like 15,000 years ago, he was one of their first gods, and he was kind of like the god of life and death and whatnot. But literally at a certain point, they sent the story changed, and they sent Osiris down the river. And he went down the river, and he was disembodied, and grew back through kind of like a tree of life concept, and then came back. And then the priest would use him now for this new construct. The new construct was Pharaoh sits at the top, and this god myth helps perpetuate that. That's what we got to look at. What are the myths? We use the term memes now, things like that, behavior that's passed on. But what are the myths that we're using that are actually kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, especially long term as a species? I won't pretend to know what they are or know all of them. I think it's just it's a group chat.
Yeah. Well,
I think text thread.
One of them that's kind of dominated Western culture for the past couple of decades is this idea of self-care. And I don't mean that to say or suggest that you shouldn't take care of yourself. I mean, especially if you're if you're a purpose-driven kind of person, you need to be 120%. You need to be able to spend 20% getting to the X and then spend 100% on the X. You know what I mean? So certainly you should be prepared for that. But this idea that somehow me and my experience through life is more important than other people, I think that's fucked. Every important thing you ever do in your life will be in the service of other people. That is not a truth. That's a fact, in my opinion, which is a fact, in my opinion, I guess is a truth. But we are incredibly myopic in the West. One of the big issues we've had fighting Islamic fundamentalism is that people like that think in terms of 100 or 1,000 years. You know what I mean? They just want to move. Mm-hmm. They're like a running back. They want to move the ball forward a little bit each generation and hope that works out. In the West, and it hasn't always been this way, but in the West right now, we definitely think in terms of 5 to 10 years or maybe just our own lives. It wasn't always like that. People that came here from Europe through Ellis Island, they didn't think that way. They worked their ass off knowing that their station in life was going to suck their whole life, just hoping that it would be a little bit better for their kids and then a little bit better for their kids and so on and so forth. Now, that is very baseline biological programming. I've talked to Brett Weinstein about this, a bunch of times. We have this idea, it's very reductive, that the purpose of life or whatever is to propagate your DNA as much as possible. But the reality is, and you see this in animal behavior, you see it in plant behavior, you see it in human behavior, is that the purpose is not just to propagate your DNA. The purpose is to propagate it as far into the future as possible, right? And that's why we build civilizations, because otherwise we would all just be Genghis Khan. You know what I mean? Just fucking every chance we got. Put seed in every belly. But even Genghis Khan built the largest group of human beings under one flag in the history of humanity, today included, right? Like nobody's ever done what he did before, at least land mass or percentage of the population wise. The reason we do this stuff is it should be telling. You know what I mean? We think that the answers are somehow in the future, but the answers are almost always in the past. Everybody is reading, ancient literature now. Everybody's talking about Stoics and things like this. Like, yeah, that was pretty obvious. We should have been doing that this whole fucking time. Why do we continue to unsolve problems we've solved and then, celebrate ourselves when we solve them again using 2,000-year-old texts? It's very, like, our level of hubris is incredible. The idea that we can manufacture in a lab treatments that nature didn't provide for us already seems pretty goddamn stupid to me, right? I mean, I don't know.
What?
That's just one man's opinion, but do you think it's coincidence that we live on a planet where the vast majority of plant life produces the one gas that we need to breathe to stay alive? No, that's not a fucking coincidence. You know what I mean? Like, so the
we,
answers are
we, we
there.
don't even have to like go into the realms of hyper esoteric, which I do like exploring, because we just don't know. We can look really not at a reductionist way, but like at a practical way, that all these things are true. And that's what I meant about a species that actually, when Eve bit the apple, or when Prometheus gave us the torch and said, here, you guys go with it. This is what I think. This is like, I subscribe to something called complexity theory. I'll take the DNA thing even a little bit further. The universe is complexifying, you know. I'm not really a Big Bang kind of guy, like where, mathematically the universe was a ball and it exploded. I don't really buy into that. I think it's been entropically breathing, expanding and contracting much longer than that. But one thing that is certain, the subatomic particle became more complex and lasted longer when it became an atom. Most atoms on the periodic table of elements survive longer. They exist in what we call order, a low entropic state, longer when they pair with another one. And if we add to that chain into things like collagen, a bigger, longer peptide chain, it lasts for 80,000 years in the right environments. Not in our bones because we beat the fuck out of it.
Right.
But it can last that because it becomes more stable. Now we keep going. Eventually we create something, the universe reaches a complexity level called DNA. We share a lot of the same DNA, you and I, even if you were completely from just Africa or whatnot, you know what I mean? We would still share a lot of a common story of complexity. And then each time we go up the organizational unit, eventually getting to the most organized / disorganized thing that we know of in the universe, you and I, people, hyper excellent at problem solving and whatnot. We're adding the complexity. And I think go back to Prometheus giving us the torch. The universe wants us to manage entropic states. There is no, like you said, coincidence is literally mathematically impossible. Nonlinear dynamic, these things can't resolve these. Like nothing in the quantum level or the most highly like edge of the black hole, there's a math change. Coincidence are just mathematically impossible. And I think that's what we're actually supposed to do as a species. We're supposed to come to terms that we're supposed to add to the level of consciousness of the universe, because everything in the universe has a measurable level of consciousness, how many feedback loops it can handle from the smallest fucking energy field onwards. And we are a representation of that. Because like really, I'm not saying there's nothing above us, Dan, in that statement. Like you said about hubris, I'm very careful about pulling out the sword of truth. But we have been given a massive responsibility. And I don't know if we fucked it up, but I do, like I said earlier on, I do believe we should be much more intentional with it. And like I said, it starts with someone realizing that they're the hero of their journey, that they're not crippled into submission by the systems and the circumstances around them, which we call victimhood. Whether you're the villain or the victim, one is just more reactive than the other. Hoist that aboard, ask yourself the question. And again, I'm not saying like yourself, but the general yourself. What am I doing to contribute to the problem? And change it. We're not fucking squirrels. We don't got to run the same routines all the time. We can gather in this stuff, and we do it bit by bit, right? Start where you are, use what you got, do what you can, rinse and repeat. And that's the basic simplified road to enlightenment, and it's not some fucking unattainable thing. It's not some source of magic. It's just, it's just developing your brain, organizing it a little bit more intentionally. That was one of the things they discovered about Einstein's mind, is they expected it to be filled with neurons that no one else had in levels we never had. But really his pruning tools within his brain were just better than most people's, because he organized his thoughts more.
Yeah, there's a good trope about that in some of Arthur Conan Doyle's writings about Sherlock Holmes, where and this is I guess some of them were written concurrent with Einstein's popularity, but most of them came before. And he talked about, like, there's this one I can't remember which book it was in, but there's this one trope where he doesn't know some very basic fact about science or something like that, but it's completely irrelevant to his life or being a detective, so he just doesn't care. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of giving him shit for it. He's like, how does that help me? I don't give a fuck about that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't have that ability, and we're overstimulated now for sure. I mean, and not in a good way, right? It's not like we're overstimulated with learning new skills and shit. We're overstimulated with bullshit.
And it's shortening our attention span. So that's go back, right? It's shaping our attention. Therefore, it's completely altering our behavior up top. But it works both ways, right? You change your behavior, you change your attention patterns. You change your attention patterns, you change your behavior. I do some of the work, a small little exercise, what I call an attention audit. Walk through your life, start with an hour. What sensory inputs? Just start with the 5 basic senses. Don't even worry about the more complex ones that we don't really interact with, like thermodynamic regulation and whatnot, proprioception, things like that. Just your 5 basic senses. And what is being absorbed? Do you need this thing? Start on a material plane, then look at the people around you. Start really looking at what's getting your attention on a conscious level. And as you do that, you'll shape it. And what is being absorbed on an unconscious or subconscious, maybe not unconscious level, will start to reveal itself. It's that the raw is activation, your reticulated activating system kind of theory, right? Where you're activating it to see these things. And the more you do that, guess what? The more it happens. And the more you do that, the more it happens. And then all of a sudden, you become a dilated person. I don't want to use terms like awake and whatnot because I think those are silly, but you raise your situational awareness. We're on a more of a guy with a gun on his desk. So yeah, we raise our situational awareness. We raise our ability to move through our environment properly. And yeah, sometimes it takes being a warrior and a survivor. And sometimes it takes being a fucking poet and a magician. Sometimes it takes being the king and whatever other, cheesy little attribute we want to put on men, but it's true.
Yeah, it is. And it
starts to shape it.
It's not only does it start to shape it, but you start to shape it consciously, because during that process, you're making value judgments. And to be honest, doing an audit of your life, very frequently, you're going to be embarrassed, disgusted, pissed off with the results. And, those are very useful tools, right? Because just like touching a hot stove, looking at your own behavior and being disgusted can be a very powerful way to change that bullshit. You know what I mean? And to your point before about, finding these ways to contribute and shit, one of the things that I like to say about that is that you shouldn't keep track of what you're owed. Instead, you should keep track of what you owe to others and find opportunities to pay that debt back. I think that's usually how people find their purpose. Another way I've said it is, if you can turn your pain and suffering into empathy for other people, chances are you can save 2 lives, yours and theirs, right? Because that's who we are as people. We're problem solvers, and we're members of communities. That's how we operate on a psychic level. That's how we operate. We can feel each other's pain even before it's articulated. You know what I mean? And it's because we share
quantum beings, right?
Yeah. We share common experience as well. So it's at every possible level, from, quantum entanglement all the way up to just, being in the same room as somebody and sharing similar stories and stuff like that. You talked about, human civilization and how a few people throughout human history have found a way to harness to some degree this idea of love and community. And just think about human civilization, even a lot of animal civilizations. You look at how the ideas of like pair bonding and community development, parenthood play a role in your life. And I think it's a very practical methodology. Whenever if you're a baseball player and you're striking out a lot, chances are you need to go into the batting cage, but you don't go swing as hard as you can every time. You break it down to fundamentals. Now, the fundamentals of life we call principles typically. So what are those principles that these guys who seem to do a pretty good job of ignoring bullshit and focusing on things that matter? I think we have, again, the West likes to be reductive quite a bit, and maybe all human beings do, but certainly the West does, and try to microwave package some of these ideas. One of them that we've done that to is this idea of passive resistance. You mentioned both Gandhi and Martin Luther King, but the principle is actually called satyagraha, and it doesn't mean passive resistance. What it means is I'm going to do what I think is right and accept the consequences for that, right? That's what it means in the original translation, which is, so yes, sit in, do a sit in, refuse to go to the back of the bus, whatever it is, but you're accepting the consequences for that because you realize that contribution, that willful act of denying authoritarianism, has a broader benefit to the community, right? And if you think about that in every part of your life, how is what I'm doing? It's easy when you're a parent. Now, it's not easy, but it's more obvious when you're a parent or you're a leader in the military or something like that, how your everyday actions impact other people. But no different than the bystander effect. If the more people that are there watching something crazy happen, the less likely somebody is to do something about it until somebody does something about it, and then other people will start doing something as well. We are in desperate need of leadership in the West.
Yeah.
Desperate need of leadership.
Yeah, it's the herd mentality for sure. But I like, oh, man, I love it because you're touching on so much, just like the meat and potatoes of what it means to be a human being. And like you said, why are we already having this kind of somewhat philosophical talk again? Socrates talked about this. Why are we doing it? And you said it right now, people are stifled into submission. And that's, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey is about that. And that's why it's really actually quite simple. Go into your dark spots, bring it back as a token, an elixir for the community around you, rinse and repeat. It's that simple, because that's what these people did. They all went through deep, dark challenges. They've mastered their fear. They didn't fight it. They didn't learn to navigate it. They mastered it so that they could bring in what Hawkins calls power, which is the love force. So on one side, he calls it force, which is a fear-based projection, which is, we'll call it kind of movement without awareness. Power is movement with awareness, with an understanding, a closer understanding of consequence, right? Because we are but human, so we don't know the forever impact, but we know we can make assessments like, this will be for the greatest amount of people for the greatest amount of time, do the greatest amount of good. This move, okay, I'll do that. We can weigh that. We have that difference engine in our head. Like I said, I think the truth is, and you know what, I'll even call out men on this. I think there's just a lot of weak men. That's what there is. I've been traveling across the U.S. and one of the interesting things is been having this conversation, and maybe it's perpetuated by me and where I'm at, but it's the concept of protection, the perimeter that men set. Now, a lot of men take the perimeter and they kind of like a glass jar over their family. Like, that's the protection, that's the perimeter. And what happens is it just isolates the family, the feminine energies and children from being children. But it's different. It's a psychological concept. You know what I mean? And it takes it, like we saw it during COVID. How many spines shriveled up and fucking tucked tail and ran? Just about everybody.
Yeah.
Just about everybody.
Well, we call it, in psychology, we call that kin selection, right? It's part of it is biological, part of it is DNA, like, and there's these little tricks that nature does. The reason that male genes happen to be a little bit more dominant these days, particularly in facial features early on in childhood, is because nature figured out through, trial and error, I guess, that if a monkey saw a baby that didn't look like him, he was going to tear his fucking head off. So now, particularly in the first 6 to 18 months of a child's life, the genes that shape their face in particular are more dominant from the male side. Makes sense, right? It happened that way because those children survived more throughout history. But, there are all these other little opportunities, I guess, for that to happen, for us to understand what what the purpose is in this process of kin selection. Now, as we become upper brain mammalians, you get to decide, you know what I mean? And it isn't always,
our behavior backtracks towards those impacts.
And it's not always conscious either. It's subconscious, but part of that subconscious decision to decide which, like for military people, it's like, my country is my family. I'm going to go protect my family. You know what I mean? But for some people that have done it better than others, they think that all men are their family. You know what I mean? And when I think about myself moving around through space and time like this, it's almost like there's a bubble around me, and anybody that comes into that bubble that thinks like I do, and that isn't That doesn't mean politically. I just mean things like I do in the with regard to protecting life and things like that. That's part of my family, right? So this imagine yourself walking around with I don't know how you would even describe it. Just a big bubble around you, 100-foot bubble, and anybody that's in that 100-foot bubble, that's part of my family right now. You know what I mean? I think that's a good way to think about things because we have a tendency, and it's something that helped us in survival back in the day, I guess, but we have this tendency to see somebody that looks a little bit different than us, like, oh, that must be, and it doesn't happen in your brain. You don't say like, oh, that guy's different, fuck him. You know what I mean? Your brain says that guy's different, keep an eye on him. And that's not a bad thing. Like when I was in the military and government service, I call it the who dies first guy, right? If I'm on patrol or something and something, I'm just looking around all the time. Like if something loud happens, that motherfucker's gonna die because he looks suspicious as shit. You know, in the Middle East and shit, it's pretty obvious. It's a guy with a fucking cell phone peeking around a corner or somebody with a gun or something like that. But we do that subconsciously in life all the time. We make these rapid, instant value judgments about people, but it's all based on the epistemology that we've agreed upon and allowed to infiltrate our mind. You know what I mean? We build these structures inside of our mind about what's good and what's bad. And if you leave it just to your brain and to your life experience to do that, you're going to get some pretty stupid results sometimes. But you can be intentional about it. You know what I mean? It's very easy and, as you said, possible to do that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned the structures. That's yes. It's all so in human truth. I think a simple way to look at it is it's always yes and you know there are no absolutes and we don't know, right? Because it's going to evolve. That's the idea. We're evolutionary people, but you mentioned structures. That's why pride is actually an issue because pride creates an us and them. It automatically creates an us and them. And when you create us and them, you're creating us and them and you're putting them outside of that. Now, as you said, we're not quite ready to walk around the world where I was like, fuck, man, like Jesus level love where everyone's getting the same exact treatment. But even him, you know, he had different treatment for the Romans. You know, he was flipping tables and whatnot. We're not quite there, but that's why like a collective issue, but or effort. But for us, I think the environment is actually even stronger. The environment we create presses those structures in our mind more than I think we really imagine right now. That's my estimate on it. I see it. I use it as part of my programs. Changing the environment is always a wormhole to growth. Now, what you do in that environment, there is many, many, many magical things we can do in that environment. You know, one, the environment of an operator turns a lump of clay into an operator. You're not born there. You know, you do find some traits that you develop along the road that make you a more likely candidate. But it's those systems around you that hammer you in and then construct your brain. That's what we are. We're a difference engine on one side, but then we're the opposite of that, where we're going to move into our environment. We're going to soak it up and we're going to allow it to create us. That's what we do. Because it's a great survival strategy. The only thing is most of it right now is built off those fear-based paradigms, where they were systems. They're just too old now. We have to look at changing them. And I don't think it's got to be violent. You know, I don't think it's got to be all fucking. I would hope it doesn't have to be. I would hope that it would be this courageous step. That was like one good thing about COVID was the world stood still for a little bit. And we fucking made it through, you know? It was like, okay, so we can be intentional about the way we go. We don't have to keep running on the fucking hamster wheel. That's insanity. That is the literal definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. Are we just all a bunch of insane people? I don't think so, you know? Because how many people do you have conversations like this with? A lot.
Yeah,
it's out there.
Quite a few. And there's quite a few people listening to the conversations as well, which is always heartening. I mean, I think this idea of molding and shaping something into something else, like a character or a personality, or you know, just the whatever everything is that makes up a human being or a conscious being or something like that, we treat that in such a shallow way these days. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody wants a quick fix for it for sure, but I think about my concern, aside from just, you know, trying to get people more broadly speaking into a better mindset about this stuff and taking responsibility for their own existence in the world, is how we operate going forward, particularly when it comes, because look, bad guys aren't going away anytime soon. The best solution for people that prey on other people is to put them in the fucking ground, so far as I'm concerned. But that's a hard job to do. It's hard to fucking, in the modern world, it's hard to go from that job and back to your family and then back to that job and then back to your family over and over. And there's a process like any other weapon. Sometimes you got to sharpen your fucking knives. Sometimes you got to take your knife out of the rotation and sharpen it. You got to send it off to the factory for a laser sharpening. Sometimes you got to put new parts on your gun. You know what I mean? It's just like any other tool. And if we're going to use ourselves as tools, whether it be, in the pursuit of violent ventures to protect other people, or whether it's, counseling other people, whatever it is, your job, you need to take the time to make sure that that you're recovering from that stuff, I think. You know what I mean? It's not easy, and it might not be possible. I've had this conversation with a lot of operators. I'm not sure if there's enough highly qualified and capable people to do that job and cycle people out in a way like you talked about with a one-to-one. I just don't know that that's ever going to be possible. So we may just have to, our community may just have to eat that, to be honest. But it is what it is, right?
So I don't really like to do it is what it is, Dan. I'm an optimist, So where it begins? The cycle begins at the beginning when we pick people. So hopefully after this fucking Ukraine Russia thing, the world is like, okay, we're fucking done with this mass movement of trying to violently take over land and whatnot. Way to go. This has been really fun. But at the front end, you pick people more properly and you create true expeditionary forces. The argument of destroying a life, we won't get into it now, and who makes that decision, kind of the ultimate decision, and what's the values backing it is a big conversation. But let's just say, yes, we have psychologically damaged people enough that we still have what are called bad guys. Okay. Expeditionary, small forces, highly trained, highly capable, highly selected. And then, give them a shelf life, give it, 7 years, whatever. And then you don't put them out to pasture. You undo it. You undo that neural anatomy. You help them build that story. Because if we do it more intentionally, then the moral wounds will be way less. We'll be able to sharpen that knife way more appropriately. And then we'll be able to holster it up a lot better on the other end.
Not just holster it up, but have it available in not just that same way, but more, I think, more appropriately. And, if you look at native culture, people didn't stay warriors forever. They became grandparents at some point, and they retired to become elders of the community and shit like that. And it is a very valuable trait to be able to survive and thrive in chaos, because chaos does happen sometimes, whether it's natural disasters or some other kind of bullshit. Sometimes things just go wrong, and having people that are just part of the community that can not just thrive but lead in that situation, it seems like we would have done a better job not protecting that asset, but making sure that it's ready for the next one. You know what I mean? Like it's you go through these stages in life. When I'm 18, I can do whatever the fuck I want. At 30, it's like, all right, I'm a little slower. At 40, I'm like, all right, everything hurts now. And I assume at 50 and 60, it's going to hurt a little worse. But if shit goes sideways right now, I'm going to be just fine. And I think that's it's very useful for a fucking civilization to have people like that floating around, and treating them as if they don't matter anymore is fucking stupid.
Yeah, I would back up and I would say that we should teach all kids how to handle chaos.
Sure.
The fact is the universe, even on Earth, it's organizing differently, but the universe is actually becoming more entropic. And entropy is just a measure of chaos and order, kind of like, for conversation's sake. It's becoming more chaotic. And after we overcome this predicament that society's in, guess what? The universe is going to have a new fucking challenge. You know what I mean? Like, there is not going to be a perfect utopia, because then we're going to have to come with the challenges of moving out of the green belt closer to our sun or whatever. You know what I mean? There'll be challenges, but we'll just learn how to handle that chaos better. Because that's like the gift the operator has, is operating in chaos. Taking some principles, like you said, some basics, and then knowing how to handle that. And most of it is it's not magic, man. It's fucking stress management. It's learning the tools. It's how the way I divide up post-traumatic growth is kind of like pre-event, event, and then post-event. very similar to like a military op, right? You do your workups, your training, your preparation, you go through the op, and then you after action it. And in between there's a lot of little steps. But if we look at life as those things happening all the time and in multiple ways, right? Because we're running these feedback loops, you just start to get a little bit of a better ability to manage it. But yeah, it's a funny conversation, right? Putting your warriors out to pasture and not giving a fuck about them, as if like, and then they'll throw terms like, well, money's an issue. You mean this concept that we print out is an issue? We can't conceptualize a bit of a solution here. You know what I mean? Like, because like there's one fact, man, and I might take some grief for this, but PTSD is, when you come out of it, which it is 100% possible, it's not as if that goes away, right? It's just your capacity is expanded. That's what we do. We stress ourselves, we adapt, and then we extend our capacity. That's the gift. That's the why we do that, right? As a warrior, okay, I'll fucking plunge my hands in the muck. When I come back, though, maybe I could use a little bit of help. Maybe we could talk about this a little bit differently. Maybe we don't just worry about it in a monetized way, you know? That's been one of the challenges we had with Citizen Green, was like, okay, there's a lot of warriors using medical cannabis, but they got to pay for it. Okay, well, how do we work it into the system to at least get them a highly discounted rate and then into free programming, you know? So we're super like excited about that, because it doesn't seem like, you know, there's people trying, and it's good. It's efforts, it's raising awareness, and there are people with some great solutions. But it just gets a little disheartening every time you go to a corner and it's like, hey man, I'm a vet, you know, got some money so I can eat. Like, you know, there's no way they're going to pull themselves out of that without their basic needs met. So
Sure.
it's, yeah.
And without a purpose too. I mean, that goes to what I was saying before. It's like, that person isn't just it seems like we view them as a burden a lot of times. But it's not. That's not the reality of the situation. The situation is that they're typically a value add. You just got to point them in the right direction. You know what I mean? And it's which makes it even dumber that we're not doing that. We're all like our entirety of North America. Well, I guess not Mexico so much, but definitely the United States and Canada suffers because we don't use these people properly, and they want to be used. You know what I mean? All they want is to have fucking purpose that they can fulfill in their life. And instead, we're like, oh, you're okay, buddy, and pat them on the back and send them on their way. No, you grab that motherfucker by the chin strap and say, look, bitch, it's time to get some work done, because that's what we respond to. We don't respond to being coddled. It just doesn't work. And I don't. At what point in any human history has the warrior class been coddled like this before? It's so bizarre to me that this is the way we've decided to do it. Usually, what happens is the ruling class or whoever it is gives them land to farm afterwards. That's been the decided choice from Asian, European, and Western culture, generally speaking, but particularly the two largest, Asian and European cultures throughout all of human history. That's been how it works, right? When Caesar conquers Gaul, he gives some of the land to his people, to his fucking soldiers. You know what I mean? That's how it works. Now it's just like, you know, here's a pat on the back and some fucking free money from the VA or whatever the fuck it is. Like, that doesn't work, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you said it, but just look around of what can be of service. And then like an interesting fact, you didn't say it as a fact, but you touched on it. One of the things that I use in the programming is stress and fear. Stress and fear has a really two things we learn super quick from: extreme stress and extreme love. When we fall deeply in love, we change very quickly. When we experience something very stressful, we change very quickly. The cool thing about stress is it can be used as a way to open up that door and then backfill it. So like you said, like the homeless guy, you know, most people, they look at a homeless person and be like, okay, that's not exactly thriving. You know, that's not the life I want. But if you go and you start choking that person, they'll probably fight for survival.
Right,
almost certainly. Because like you said, as soon as stress gets in, your body activates, it reacts to it. It's like the willow in the wind, you know, it gets some stress. Oh, fuck, I got to adapt and get a little stronger. We do that. We respond to tropisms like that. So why not put them into a position that has a little bit more, I was talking to a guy, he was telling me that in the US, you guys, most of the park service was built by this kind of core that I can't remember what he called it, but they brought in, it was kind of similar to a military-esque, but it was like an obligation to your country
Mm.
almost, where you go and you help build these trails and whatnot, a bit physical labor, a little bit of routine and whatnot. But what's cool about that is, like, in the military, we backfill that with soldierly stuff, how to kill people, how to
Mm.
hunt people, how to insert, that. But you can backfill that with other concepts of how to be more human, how to be more connected, how to enjoy your time more, how to be, um, how to treat your body in a more healthy way.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So that you set these conditions, because we're very good at being conditioned. We
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's how it works. Look, before we get out of here, tell us about Citizen Green and what it does, and if people are in, I guess, wherever it's available right now, how they can get in touch with you about it, and then give me a little brief on Dark Night of Our Soul, your documentary.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I appreciate the
Mm.
space to do that, Dan. So Citizen Green, we're starting up in Canada at the end of this month. You can find us at right now the specialforcesexperience.com. And then just head down the Citizen Green rabbit hole. This is for the Canadians right now who have medical cannabis covered. You purchase through a certain company, and once you purchase through that company at no cost to yourself, you're automatically given a code to enter into our programming, which is certainly top notch. Shortly after, for the American soldiers who are busy trying to chase around the discounts, we found a way through blockchain and non-fungible tokens and things of that nature and couponing to offer a consistent discount through certain growers, so you don't have to chase it until, like the VA, or we get enough funding, or your insurance starts to cover it. And as soon as you start purchasing through those companies, you're automatically able to enter into the course, where we'll have community, we'll have purpose, we're going to do operations, we're going to do those kinds of things that you talked about, where we're looking at the holistic picture. And then Dark Night of Our Soul, starting May 11th, we're going to start our impact campaign. Please do come and check it out. This is how we're going to start actioning change. These are tools not just for the extremely stressed, they're literally for everybody. And you can find us at posttraumaticgrowth.film, or again, the specialforcesexperience.com, and head down the rabbit hole. We're going to start doing viewings of a short film, and so we can finish this thing up. We're on its last legs, but it's been all out of my pocket, and I could use a little help to take it to the last little bit. It turns out the film industry is not cheap. They're not giving away this stuff. But again, one feeds into the other, and then we're able to continue these programs. Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you describing all of that and the stuff you do for the community. You know, it is not everybody's going to do what you do, but there is purpose out there for everybody. I mean, I take it to the very one of the principles of this show is, do something every day to help your country. Your countrymen are all men, and I think, there's stuff out there. You don't have to save the fucking world. All you got to do is do your part.
Sometimes it's just eat healthy for a day or something. You know what I mean? Like, let's not overcomplicate it. If you can show up better for your mankind, because like you said, when you start at zero, it's a big lift to go right to helping a giant community. But yeah, I love it.
Look, I appreciate you coming today, and I appreciate the conversation. It's been enlightening. I enjoy this. Hopefully, you guys got some out of it as well.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dan.
Yes, sir. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.